Hi, I'm Dustin Weiniger. A year ago, I uploaded a video on how to make 45 Colt black powder cartridges for these old single-action revolvers. Well, I've received a lot of comments on that video over the past year, and some questions on why I do some of the things the way I did in that method of making the cartridges. So I thought a part 2 video would be in order. Today, I'll give some clarifications on some of the things in that previous method, and show you a simpler method I've adopted since then. So why don't we head inside now and revisit the topic of 45 Colt black powder cartridges. Here are the components that you'll need for making these cartridges. You'll need your brass cases, either brand new or previously fired cases that have been cleaned. If you need to learn how to clean the cases after you use black powder in them, I'll leave a link in the description below to my video on that. You'll need bullets. In this case, I am using .452 diameter 45 Colt bullets. These weigh 250 grains, and they are round nose, flat point, hard cast lead bullets. You'll also need black powder bullet lube, which comes in different varieties. Your gunpowder, in this case I'm going to use real black powder, as I'll talk about later. You'll need a powder flask to pour it with, a powder measure to ensure you're using the correct amount. You'll also need your 45 Colt dies. Since we're doing 45 Colt cartridges, you'll use those in your reloading press. And you'll need a caliper for measuring the overall length of your cartridges. Now, I didn't mention in the first video, but I will in this one, the maximum overall length for 45 Colt is 1.6 inches. Now, the cartridges I'm using are using those round nose flat point bullets, and because of that flat point, it does not actually reach 1.6. This one is 1.559, and that's pretty typical. And you'll notice each one may vary just a little bit from the others, but as long as you don't exceed 1.6, you'll be just fine. The first step is to prepare the bullets. These bullets, which are the easiest to find, have a smokeless powder lube in the grooves, which is not good to use in black powder cartridges because it mixes with the fouling and really causes a mess in the barrel. So that needs to be replaced with a black powder lube. I mentioned that in the other video, but in this video I'll show you the process. I'm going to heat the bullets with a hair dryer, just a few at a time like this, and then wipe away the lube once it's softened. So I'll turn on the hair dryer and start heating them up. Now that lube is good and soft, and you'll notice that it starts to drip, which is why I do this over a scrap piece of cardboard, or you could just use an old towel or a rag. Now I'm going to take a gun cleaning rag and just wipe that liquid lube off of the bullets. And now this one is clean. And then of course you just repeat that on each bullet. In my original video, the lube I used as a replacement was this Thompson Center Boar Butter, which works great. But since then, I've discovered this Uncle Mike's lube, which I've been using ever since for my cartridges and for my cap and ball revolvers. It's a little firmer, which makes it a little less runny to work with. So I'll open it up, and lubing the bullets is a simple process. I just take a little bit of lube on my finger, and I just smear that all the way around the bullet, making sure the lube groove is completely full. Then just wipe the excess away, especially from the bottom, and repeat that on each bullet. Now I'll move into what you probably recognize as the more familiar steps of reloading. So here's my reloading press that you saw in the other video, and I've already installed my sizing and decapping die, and it will be important today to have a die that is both a resizer and a decapper, because I am using previously fired brass that still has a primer in it. So I'll place that into the press, and as I lift this up, you'll notice that the old primer is pushed out here, and I've already loaded a new primer into the press, so I'll just give it a squeeze. Now this case is resized, reprimed, and ready for the next step. After you've resized and primed each case, you'll need to expand the mouth of the case to accept the bullet. So I'll put it back in the press. I've already installed my expander die, and I've tightened it down a little more than I did in the original video to expand the mouth a little wider. The reason I didn't do that in the last video was so that the brass wouldn't stretch as much and it might last longer for more shots. But I'll do it this way just to show you another method, and while this way the brass may not last as long, it does allow easier seating of the bullet so that it doesn't shave the lead off like it did in the other video. So I'll just run that up into the die, back out, and the case is expanded. Now it's time to add the gunpowder. In the previous video, I used the black powder substitute called Pyrodex, but in this method, I'll go ahead and use real black powder. Since these cartridges are for a pistol and they're relatively small, I'll be using triple FG as the granulation size. The charge I'm going to use is the same as I did in the other method, which is 35 grains. I've already set my measure to that, so I will just fill that with powder. Now in the other video, I tapped that down with a metal case just to make sure it was settled, and I got asked why I do that. And to be honest, I did it just so I could fit as much powder as I possibly can. As I mentioned in that video, you don't have to worry about putting too much. As long as there's no airspace between the bullet and the powder, you'll be okay. But it's not necessary. You could load it just like this. So I'll just close up that measure, dump that into the case, and sometimes some of it likes to get stuck, as it did there. So make sure you get all of it out. And that will need to be added to each of your cases. Now comes the part that will really be different from the method in the other video, and simpler for you to do. In the other video, you may remember that I made a wad that was made from a piece of cork, a lubricated piece of felt, and a card that went on top of the powder and under the bullet, since these modern bullets don't hold enough lube for black powder to work its best. This time, I'm not going to do any of that. Instead, I'm just seating the bullet, and I'm going to put it right on top of the powder. Now, I got asked after the last video why I don't just always do that. One person commented that he had found an old cartridge from the days of the Old West, took it apart, and there was no wadding, just a bullet. Well, you have to understand, back in those days, black powder was the only gunpowder around, and so the bullets were made for it. They had big grooves, or they would have multiple lube grooves so you could get more lube in them. These modern bullets do not, so that's why it's best if you use a lubricated wad under the bullet, so I recommend that, but they will work, as you'll see in a little while, if you do it this way. So today, to make it simple, I'll just run this way, right up into the bullet seating die, and back out. Now after doing that, you're going to have some lube that gets pushed up out of the case that was excess, so just take a rag and wipe that off, and repeat this step for each cartridge. There's just one more step to this process, and that is to put a crimp on the case, which will help hold the bullet firmly in place. So I put it back into the press. I've already installed my bullet crimping die, and I've set that die for just a moderate to perhaps slightly tighter than moderate crimp. So I'll just run the cartridge up into the die, back out, and now we have a finished cartridge. Now isn't that a beautiful sight? The payoff for all that work is a full gun belt for a trusty revolver. Now it looks like I've got these loaded just in time. If you followed my channel, you know that I'm always being bullied by that high fructose gang of carbonated bandits, also known as 2-liter bottles of orange soda, and it seems it's always me that has to stop them. So why don't we get outside and see if these new cartridges are up to the challenge. As usual, I'll be using the cowboy load, so I'll load one chamber, skip one, and then load the other 4. And like I said, the high fructose gang is back out in full force. I just don't understand why the Utah desert is so infested with orange soda. But it is, so let's see if these new 45 Colt black powder cartridges can clean it up. For these next 5 shots, I want to show you something that was suggested by a viewer. This is the lube that I used in making the cartridges, and since there's not enough of a groove in the bullet to get a good amount of lube for black powder, I had a viewer say that what he does is rub some lube in the front of the chamber like you would on a cap and ball revolver. Well, I gave that a try a while back and it actually works, so I'll go ahead and show you that. Just rub a bit of lube in the front of the chamber like that and repeat all the way around. Now, this lubricating method is a little unorthodox for a cartridge gun, but it definitely ensures you have plenty of lube, and as you'll see in just a moment, they still shoot just fine. One bottle slid down the hill, so I had to set that one back up. Why don't we try that one in slow motion, get a good look at that beautiful gun smoke. As always, I hope you enjoyed this video and found it helpful. Now, if you never saw the first video I made on 45 Colt black powder cartridges, you can find a link to it in the description below. Now, just a few thoughts in ending this video. Remember, when you're making cartridges, especially with cast lead bullets like I did today, you're handling a lot of lead and getting that on your hands. So make sure that you're washing up thoroughly after you do that, especially before you eat any food. And I recommend using soap and cold water. Hot water can actually warm your skin and open your pores and allow those tiny lead particles down into your skin. Also, remember, when you're making ammunition, using firearms, you're doing so at your own risk. As I say in the disclaimer at the beginning of this video, this video is meant to be helpful, but you are responsible for your actions, so make sure that you're studying and doing these things very safely. If you did like the video, please click that like button below and subscribe to the channel, and I'd appreciate it if you share this video so other people can enjoy the fun of the Old West black powder cartridges. Thanks so much for watching.